materials you need for Zentangle. You could use a Sharpie, either a regular tip or a really fine tip. If you have any sort of black pen, also works really good. Pencil as well if you're a little nervous about making mistakes. When you start with the Zentangle, you're going to start with creating some tiles. So I start by making 4 corners of a square, just with some dots. It doesn't have to be a perfect square, but close enough, and then I go ahead and draw in the lines of the square on the side. And we're going to go ahead and create 3 tiles on one side in the same way. So I'm trying to kind of use my eye to line up each of the edges so they're all about the same height, same width. Again, it's not about being a perfect artist, but being patient and flexible and working with your mistakes. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So again, I'm using the squares that I've already done to kind of help line up my next set of squares on the other side of my paper. So we're going to start with using lines in Zentangles. The first box, draw a zigzag line. So a line with lots of straight lines in it. And we're going to kind of copy that line or kind of follow that line and make a zigzag right through the middle, almost like a double version of it. And you can color that in with your thicker Sharpie if you like, or whatever marker you have on hand, pen that you have on hand. And next we're just going to kind of do a contour line. So we're just going to follow that same line right alongside it, all on one half of our tile. So the lines can be close to each other, but not touching. So make sure you're kind of filling that shape in to the other side of the tile. And you can do the same thing on the other side as well. Next, let's try some organic lines, some lines that are more like wavy, curly. So start with kind of a curvy line and make a double version of that, another contour version, and make a couple of those thick, wavy lines within your tile. Give them a little space between each other. We're going to keep using those curvy lines just to kind of fill in that space in between those thicker curvy lines that we made. If you want to alternate which direction they're facing, you can do that. Next, we're going to use shapes in our Zentangle. So we're going to start with geometric shapes, things like squares or rectangles or triangles. Here I'm going with some squares that I'm lining them up in a row. So kind of like when we did our boxes with our points in the corner, except this time I'm lining them up as straight squares. Take your time with it. Don't worry if you make a mistake. That's how we learn. And you can color in each one of these shapes if you like, if you want to color them in with a pattern or just color them in dark so we have kind of contrast. Contrast is when we have lights and darks. So this will look really, it'll stand out. Now let's let's try some organic shapes, kind of funky, weird round shapes, things that you might find in nature. So I'm going along with the same idea of making these in a row, one right on top of another. The row on top kind of fits halfway between the other ones underneath it. So I know some of them are going to go off the edge of my tile. So I'm not going to see all of those shapes. Sometimes I might just see parts of the lines. Why don't we add a little bit of detail in there too? So in between each of those kinds of finger shapes, we'll put a little black circle or a black oval to make it more interesting. So let's really push this idea of contrast, of lights and darks. So I'm going to use some shapes for this one, some organic and geometric shapes. So now what we're going to do is I'm coloring in the negative space. That's the space that's in between all of those shapes, which is a little tricky, a little tedious, but with some concentration, you can very carefully color around them. So let's try some organic lines, maybe doing something with some lines. I have some spirals. Spirals are often used in Zentangles. So I'm going to fill the whole tile with some curlicue lines and maybe fill in the space a little bit more. See how I have some of them going off the tile? Maybe we'll put some polka dots in there too. So Zentangles really are about filling the space with as much detail and pattern as you can. So here I'm going back in and I'm starting to color in all the negative space between the curlicue lines and the polka dots that I made. So this can be a little tedious, and especially if you're holding something really long, like see how I'm shaking my hand out. If your hand feels a little crunched, stretch it out if you need to. Make sure you relax your hand. It should be relaxing, it should be nice and calming and help you kind of focus when you're working on a Zentangle. Remember, my friends, Zentangles are not about getting it perfect. You'll learn from your mistakes much quicker than if you don't make mistakes. It's supposed to be relaxing, so enjoy it.